A new passport program has been launched. It is Botswana. We couldn't talk about it. There was a media ban. It's been lifted. It's a new citizenship by investment program. We're going to go into more details about it and also look at it through the context of other programs that came out this year, but other programs that came out in Africa too. Hi, this is Jeremy from the Millionaire Migrant. I have been in the industry of citizenship by investment now for 15 years. So I remember this is at $75,000 in Botswana. I remember when Dominica was at $75,000, going way back before most people were even involved in this space, as now there are many people involved. So I was recently on CNBC Africa talking about how residency and citizenship can be used as a hedge against capital flight and currency risk. So it's interesting to see that there are actually more African programs coming to the fore. So we had Sierra Leone, then we had Sao Tome, and now we've got Botswana. I heard there might even be Zimbabwe as well. But of all of these, I think that before I judge my favorites, I always avoid doing favorites. I try to be as impartial as possible. It's helped my business over the years. It puts my clients' best interests at the forefront. I think before we start to pick winners and losers, it's important that we just go through more details about Botswana and also understand why this is happening, why there's programs in Africa, why anyone would want to take this citizenship in any case. A little bit of backdrop to Botswana. So Botswana is a landlocked, diamond-rich country in the southern part of Africa. Its population is 2.6 million people. It is the world's second largest producer of natural diamonds after Russia. However, not everything has been plain sailing recently because everybody knows about the rise of lab-grown diamonds is affecting the diamond industry. So a lot of diamond manufacturers and diamond miners are really suffering. So in fact, Botswana, which is the largest producer of diamonds in Botswana, has reduced capacity by 40% just to try and manage the pricing in the market. So that is probably the reason, actually, I would say is one of the main reasons why Botswana would look at other ways to raise revenue. And if you look back at the history of citizenship by investment programs, we're going back 20 years now, they all came about because other industries came through the end of the cycle, started to fail, and they wanted to raise other capital. That wasn't always the case. You look at Turkey, for example, Malta, they had other options too for their citizenship programs, but they just wanted to diversify. But if you look at Botswana, I mean, it's very clear why they have to raise such a program. The price is starting at $75,000. That's got everyone very interested because people are saying, well, this is a great price point, considering especially that the Caribbean programs increased from around 100, 150, they're now at 200 minimum and above. And so now that a lot of people are looking at that, it creates a gap in anything sub 200,000. So what we had Nauru that came out earlier this year, just over 100K. You had also Sierra Leone, and then you had Sao Tome and Principe, which was the least expensive at $90,000. Now, if you go all the way back, as I mentioned, I've been doing this for a long time, way before most people have been involved in this space. I remember when Dominica was $75,000, and then it got Schengen, which it didn't always have Schengen. Maybe this is information for you, but it didn't always have Schengen visa-free access. And then afterwards, they realized that they could increase the price. It was also the only second option available at that time. This is before we had Antigua Barbuda, Grenada, St. Lucia, Malta, Cyprus, all the other programs. But if we look at $75,000 today in Botswana, this is even less than Sao Tome and Principe, which got a lot of people interested recently. But now everyone's like, hold on a minute, I want to do Botswana. Look at the price for that. And I've heard of Botswana. I never knew about Sao Tome and Principe, 2 weeks ago. I think there's also other things about Botswana that will make it interesting. And I'll come to that in a bit. But when Sao Tome came out, we didn't have anyone for Sierra Leone, but with Sao Tome, we had a couple of clients just immediately just ready to move. And we just had to tell them, as we often do, let's not start yet. Let's go and dig a little bit deeper. So I'll do another video in the future talking about how you vet a new program, the questions you want to ask, how you can scrutinize it and feel comfortable. And I say this because in the last 2 days, a couple of my existing passport clients called me asking about a Slovenia passport. So we have to, I can tell you straight off the bat, that's not a legit program, but we verify any new program that comes in because we want to make sure that we're fully protecting our clients. So when Sao Tome came out, we had 2 clients that once we gave them the green light, we just said you can proceed with caution because there's always the beginning where things start to come out. But we asked a lot more questions and did more due diligence than anybody else. I can tell you that categorically. But the reason that people would want a passport, why would you want an African passport? I can tell you is that, first of all, some people do a lot of business in Africa, and getting around is very complicated. I know myself, I travel fairly frequently to Africa, less so now, but it's very difficult for me to get visas. Well, not difficult visas, but it was complicated, it was a headache, and I would need one for every single country. If you would get Sao Tome and Principe, you're part of the ECOWAS community, which is the economic community of West African states. And my colleague Irena did a video on it, I think about a month ago, talking about this. It went viral because a lot of people want to know. But essentially, a lot of people want to get that type of passport to facilitate business for them. But now we've got Botswana, which is $15,000 less. Now, I would just caveat the fact that, I had a client yesterday saying, look, Botswana, yes, I'm ready to do it. I'm going to do it at $75,000. I had to tell him, it was like, when these prices get announced, that's just your baseline price. On top of this, you need to factor on the additional associated costs. So he was like, well, what do you mean? You're going to charge me $25,000? Like, no, I don't mean that. There is a passport fee. The booklet itself costs money. There is a citizenship certificate that costs money. You will have also the due diligence fees. You could have bank processing fees. You could have compliance fees. You could have the actual, agent fees. So before we start assuming that it's 75 all in, I can tell you right now, without even knowing any of the further details, because it only came out 2 days ago, a day ago, there's going to be more fees on top, but you're going to be close. It's still going to be sub 100, I would say. But nevertheless, let's see what you're getting for that price. So Botswana was actually the first country in Southern Africa to introduce e-passport. So it's an e-passport. You have visa-free travel to 80 countries, including, and guess what, UK visa-free. You've got a lot of countries which are actually very appealing to people who live nomadic lives, territorial tax jurisdictions. So you've got Singapore, you've got Georgia, you've got Malaysia, you've got Panama, you've got Philippines. So if you live that nomadic lifestyle and you want to be able to get a passport that is not part of any CRS, or is something that you just need the cheapest option, because visa-free travel is not your be-all and end-all, because you probably have a very strong passport. You've also got the fact that you have consulates around the world in Australia, China, Germany, Japan, Kenya, Kuwait, Nigeria, South Africa, to name a few. So you've got decent consular service. I think that's more than Sao Tome has. So you have more visa-free, you have more consular support. A lot of people who are saying, you know what, I am concerned about what is going to happen to those countries that have citizenship-by-investment programs but have Schengen or EU visa-free. You could look at this and just saying, well, if you're really worried about that and you don't want to pay $200,000, $250,000, $300,000, you could get one of these passports, one of these African passports, doesn't have to be Botswana, and then get an EU PR. Latvia is from 50,000 euros. You can do Greece 250. You've got Malta has a program. You can do Hungary. People don't talk about it much, but it has a residency program there as well. Not as good as the last one that we processed in the past. That was a very nice program, actually. It's more expensive than you want, but if you overlap then you'll never have to worry about that, because you just be a permanent resident. I think it's good to have these options. I'm very excited. I think that we need to understand why countries take this option. I mean, why does St. Kitts happen? Is because the sugar industry was affected, and actually the first donation option it had was the SIDF, which is the Sugar Industry Diversification Fund. Again, showing my age and my experience talking about this. So countries, I think in the future, more countries will launch these programs. You could start to see more probably in Eastern Europe, I would say, maybe in Asia. Reason being is that there is always demand. There is a lot of demand for this. The world is very uncertain. I mean, look at what is happening in the US, UK, Europe. As soon as that happens, as well as other factors, which is debasement of currency, which is crypto regulations, somebody will find some kind of reason to protect and bulletproof their sovereignty and make sure that they have the ability to navigate all the options that are out there. So it's passports, residencies, tax residencies, tax efficient structures. People are feeling that they need a little bit more agency in their life because the decisions being made by the people higher above are not in line with their personal goals. So this is a very cost-efficient way to start out on your journey. Or let's say, for example, you're like some of my clients who just, they've already got a second passport, maybe a third passport, and they just want to get something else because they like matching colors. I mean, if you see the colors of these passports, sometimes is a motivating factor. I think I have 3 different colors, I think, at the last check. But at the same time, I don't think it's for a bar story or having a mix and match in your passport drawer. I think for some people, it's about about being able to be part of different parts of the world, different continents, but ultimately this is going to come to price sensitivity. I should add that this has come with a caveat that there will be a finite list, an allocation. And the previous time that this happened for any type of citizenship program, at least they adhered to it, was in Montenegro. So Montenegro, when it first came out, had a restriction on the number of people who could apply. And then when they reached that quota, they closed the program. So this is going to have the same principle, which again, I think is very nice because it gives an element of exclusivity, which you would imagine from a country that mines genuine diamonds. So I think that's quite nice. And I think that, again, but why would you do that at such a low price point? But I'm not complaining. I think that this is very exciting. Who knows, I might do it myself. I would actually come to one thing that I think is important to talk about when you're doing scrutiny on passports, specifically citizenship programs in Africa, and I'll come back to that at the end. But what I would say right now is that this is going to open beginning of next year, Q1 2026. We'll have more information as and when it comes, but we won't be doing any more videos about this. You will have to contact us, reach out to us, subscribe to the newsletter, book a call with us, reach our team. We have been involved in this specific industry for 15 years, I mentioned. We're talking about 11,000 passports. I'm not someone that just, booked a podcast studio and just start talking about this. This is my own podcast studio. I own the space that is in. I furnish the whole place. I have my own team that does R&D for me. I have an operations team. I have a client relations team. I'm not someone who did a passport and now talks about it. This is a proper organization. Millionaire Migrant is an offshoot of the Savouring Partners, which is a multiple government accredited brand that handles applications on behalf of governments all around the world. I think we have 8-9 applications now at the last count, which is, again, more than most. We are not partially connected to any one government. Sometimes it's actually good for you to deal with somebody who's actually in that country. I always say DYDD, do your own due diligence. You should do it on us. You should do it on me. You should do it on everybody. But sometimes you go directly to jurisdiction. You're happy with that service provider, then you don't need people like us. But if you don't know that if that jurisdiction is the right one for you, and you don't know that passport program person in that jurisdiction is going to give you the ugly side as well as the pretty side, that's something you need to be mindful of, because if you go direct, of course, they're going to tell you the best things and not the worst things. Or if you don't know if that particular legal practitioner or service provider, authorized agent or lawyer is the right one, or that you're not sure, this is when you come to companies like us who give you completely impartial point of view. We leverage on our volume and experience in this to make sure that you have a smooth process so that you can focus on what you're good at, which is, looking after your family and making money. One thing I would say on this last point here about Africa is that we need to check a little bit more on Botswana when it comes out. We have already done a deep dive on Sao Tome. It's not actually all in the Renner's video, but you'd have to reach out to us to check our kind of deep dive on what we saw in Sao Tome and Principe program. I just want to be very clear that Africa is a volatile continent. Not that the rest of the world isn't, but Africa has a history of volatility. This is something that you need to be very careful of passport programs which are successful and sometimes in later time unsuccessful. I don't think that we have anything to worry here, because I believe that the companies behind these structures are doing everything very much by the book. Nevertheless, we also check it out for ourselves as well. Sometimes there have been cases where new programs would launch and other agents would rush in and we were just not satisfied, and we ended up avoiding that bullet. So to name a couple, I won't mention them all, but Moldova, North Macedonia, these are two that spring to mind where they came out, everyone was like, yeah, we can do it, and then it got extremely messy. That's Botswana. I think it's great news. I think it's good to have more options there, and I think a lot of people within the community are extremely excited, not just within the industry ourselves, but in the wider community of people, digital nomads, sovereign individuals, all very excited. We will bring you more information, but for now, please subscribe if you want to get the news as fast as it arrives and vetted as well. We don't just talk about it, we check facts before we bring it to you. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.